Well, I thought we'd start with introductions. I'm Joan Hawley, Superior Engineering, and working on CMOM programs, and I'll be updating on what I've been working on in the SSO role. The person who did introduce himself is Jack Saltes, DNR, and Dwayne I always mess up your name. Chuko. And I'd like for you to just go around the room and say your name and who you are with. Nate, I'll let you.
Nathan Qualls with New Water.
Jerry Lansall, Village of Hobart.
Jeff Hart, Village of Howard.
And if you're, I would appreciate, because I have another thing, an update on a contact list. If you're with a satellite, you know, that comes to New Water, or any other regional plant, could you just let me know you're a satellite, or let us know you're a satellite? Thank you.
Glenn Simonson, Village of Hobart.
Milwaukee, OW. Satellites.
Yeah, please, if you want.
Andy Lucas with Brown Caldwell.
Steve Donlin, Brown Caldwell.
Wayne Fish, New Water. Matt Schmidt, New Water.
Lincoln Williams, New Water.
Bob Zepnick, New Water.
Jeff Elrick, Village of Little Chute, Satellite.
Marty Jansen, Village of Little Chute. Likewise. Cliff White, Sturgeon Bay.
Amy Moore, City of Green Bay.
Lisa Saru, New Water.
Karen Harriman, City of De Pere.
Matt Heckenweibel, City of Green Bay, Satellite.
Ryan Vanderloop, New Water.
Tricia Garrison, New Water.
Craig DeCane, Luxembourg, Satellite.
Kathy Garfinkel, Luxembourg, Satellite. Carrie Shedward, Batesville Sanitary District, Satellite.
Jeff Piat, Village of Alloway, Satellite.
Randy Over, Village of Swamico, Satellite.
Nick Brown, Village of Swamico, Satellite.
Gary Sikich, company called BioLincius.
Tom Rogers, Village of Pulaski, Satellite.
Mark Forbidden, Wellscott, Sanitary District, Satellite.
Mark Servo, Heart of Development, Water and Sewage District.
Jeff Mazzana, Garrison,
Eric Rakers, City of Pierre, Satellite.
Al Fiber, Village of Ashwaubenon, Satellite.
Doug Martin, Village of Ashwaubenon, Satellite.
Mark Panzer, Tom Ledge, Satellite.
Lee Tanner, Tom Longview.
Greg Little from Lawrence, Satellite.
Edgar Medina.
Gary Kincaid, DNR.
Kelly O'Connor, DNR.
What would I say, no?
I'll wait.
There are, in case you didn't get it, I can hand out, there are booklets on the CMOM. Okay, you can do that. And agenda. And so, Dwayne, if you want to start with your presentation.
Alrighty. Hopefully this will not take 20 minutes. Jack, I'll leave more time for Jack.
We have all one.
Okay, which, where do I go up on that?
Nope, I can do this.
Okay, purpose here, well, let me just further introduce myself. I've been working, or I worked for the DNR for 40 years. I retired 5 years ago, almost to the day, 5 years ago. And one of the things I took with me in retirement was the SSO rule, the so-called SSO rule, which I started working on when I was with the agency. And it took us a long, long time to get to this point, but hopefully we now have something in place that will help you do your work, as well as hopefully prevent any enforcement actions on the part of the agencies. Now I know New Water or City of Green Bay has an AO from EPA, but hopefully this will help us get through problems with sanitary sewer overflows and excessive clear water in our sanitary sewer systems. So let me just give you a few basic elements of what the rules contain. And there were 4 different rules that the department modified at the time this whole package went through. It affects all sewage collection system owners, both public and private. If there are private systems that are owned by, for example, a college or a campus of some sort, those are included. Public systems, sanitary districts, cities, villages, whatever. Affects both systems with both sewers and treatment facilities as well. So publicly owned treatment works like the New Water facility or Green Bay, there are elements of this that also, or this rulemaking that also affected them. And I think for most of you then, the satellite systems, which are collection systems connected to another system that provides the treatment for the entire area. And sometimes people are calling them customers. So what does the rule require? Your responsibilities as the owner or operator of a sewage collection system. First of all is to prevent and reduce the number of SSOs that occur in your system. There is a specific prohibition in the rule that says sanitary sewers are illegal. And those of you who are satellites, you have a general permit that says that, as well as the specific treatment facilities have a condition in the permit that says that that is the case. So if there is an SSO, you have to respond to the events in a certain manner, report that to the agency. There are CMAR, compliance maintenance, annual reporting requirements associated with sanitary sewer overflows or collection systems. You have to develop within 3 years a CMOM, which will be discussed extensively. And then not just develop a CMOM to lay on the shelf somewhere, but actually to implement the CMOM requirements that you develop. Potential for specific facility or system permit requirements are incorporated into the rules. So if there are things that specifically the agency decides you need to do with your collection system, they can incorporate, the agency will incorporate those requirements into the permit. So as I said, SSOs are prohibited, no questions asked. The DNR's enforcement response to a permit violation, which is an SSO, is that they could publish or send to you a notice of violation. If indeed that's not responded to appropriately, a referral to the Department of Justice could occur, and then enforcement action would occur through some sort of a court action. The department could also modify, as I indicated, permits to require those specific actions that may be necessary for your facility or your system. With respect to building or basement backups, the rule specifically says they are not SSOs. So if there are building or basement backups, they are not, technically they are not prohibited or fall under that prohibition. But if indeed there are situations where there are a lot of basement backups in a particular area, those backups are the result of a collection system deficiency, hydraulic inadequacy, or a lot of grease getting into the system, fog getting into the system that prevents the sewer system from operating appropriately, the department then could issue a permit requirement to fix that, and that's associated with the basement backups. The department, the state doesn't have the same legal mechanism as EPA does with respect to administrative orders, like was issued to the city of Green Bay. So the Department of Natural Resources can't issue an administrative order based upon basement backups. They would have to, the department would issue a permit requirement to do something similar to the administrative order effect. The department's enforcement response, if a SSO is reported, discretion in the enforcement action. Was it unavoidable? Would it cause a lot of injury, loss of life, severe property damage? These things are all part of the rule package. Were there feasible alternatives to have prevented the SSO in the first place? Was it caused by unusual or severe weather conditions? Again, these are things the department could take into consideration before any significant or for elevating an enforcement response. Was it a result of an accident? Did somebody run into a lift station? That sort of thing with the truck, and it caused the power outage and the overflow occurred as a result of that. Another thing that I think is going to become more important in determining what the agency may do is the status of the CMOM program. Where are you with respect to the CMOM program development and implementation? Are you actively doing things that might prevent SSOs in the future? That could be part of the discretion the agency would employ in response to an SSO. CCAP, which I'll talk about later, which is a system evaluation capacity assurance plan. What's the status of that? Are things being implemented to address the SSO? And then other things that we should be doing to prevent SSOs in the first place. So what is the owner response to if you have an SSO? Take all feasible steps to control or limit the discharge. Clean up after the discharge occurs, intercept or reroute the flow, haul it, pump it, whatever the case might be, whatever is within your repertoire of actions that you might take in response to an SSO. Recover any sewage that might reside on the streets or in low areas, whatever the case might be. Clean up debris, sample and measure the overflow if at all possible. Report within 24 hours to the department via phone, fax, or email. There's a 5-day reporting requirement, and the form is indicated. You can go to the DNR website, and it's 3400-184. That's recently been revised, so there's a new format on the DNR website, and you report the date, the time, the duration of the event, volume, location, etc. If the discharge after 5 days still has not stopped and it's continuing, when will it, in your best estimation, be controlled or stopped? What's the cause of the overflow? There's space in the form for filling out what caused the overflow. Was it precipitation, soil saturation, etc.? Was anybody exposed to it? Was it in a public park or something like that? What steps have been taken to mitigate the impacts of the overflow? And were there any building backups or basement backups? And what was the proximity of those to the overflow itself, so there can be some connection perhaps drawn between the location of the overflow and any building backups. There's a requirement in the rule to notify the public, a public notification in a local newspaper of some sort. As part of your CMOM development, it's your responsibility to say how you're going to do that. So your CMOM will have an emergency response plan. Part of that emergency response plan is to say how you are going to notify the public of any overflows. Notify drinking water systems. I don't know if you really fall into that category. There's a specific requirement in the permit if you're required to notify a drinking water system. Lastly, satellites must notify the downstream collection and treatment system. So if the village of Ashwaubenon has an overflow, you are obligated to inform New Water that you have had an overflow. So essentially, I assume that what will happen is you'll send the report that you send the DNR, that form, to the downstream collection treatment system.